Thank you for joining us on this meeting regarding the Kit Carson Monument. Victoria, did you want to read the brief statement on recording?
Hello, this meeting is being recorded. Materials from this recording will be made available on the Kit Carson website. If you check the chat, that link is available in the chat. Please note that if you do not wish to be recorded, you will want to exit the meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Beth, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon or evening for those of us on the East Coast, and welcome to this meeting. We appreciate your time in being here. I am Beth Savage. I am the director of GSA's Center for Historic Buildings, and in that capacity, I also serve as GSA's Federal Preservation Officer. I'm very happy to be joined today with many of my colleagues from Region 7 and with Julie Ramey, to whom I will turn over the reins for a piece of the beginning of the meeting.
Wado, Beth, thank you. OCO, everyone, hello. First, I would like to introduce myself. I am the tribal liaison out of the administrator's office here at GSA. I am Cherokee and now joining you from the homelands of the Anacostan and Pamunkey tribes, now known as Washington, D.C. I would like to open up with a brief land acknowledgement statement before we begin discussions. We acknowledge that we are coming together from around the country on the traditional lands of the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, speaking specifically of a monument located on the historical lands of the Dene and Pueblo people, several of which are here joining us today. With this, we pay our respect to our elders, both past and present, and respectfully acknowledge the indigenous people who have stewarded this land throughout generations. I want to give a special acknowledgement to the tumultuous history of the United States with our Native nations as we gather here today. In this acknowledgement, we express our gratitude for your meeting with us to discuss the Kit Carson Historical Monument. Through collaboration, we hope to strengthen our relations for the future. With this, I would like to invite the next speaker. Wado.
And that would be back to me. Thank you very much, Julie. The first thing that I want to make clear in the meeting is that GSA has not yet made a decision on the future of the monument that we'll be discussing today. The discussion about this monument is one among public discourse that is about the ongoing debate on complicated contested history, historical figures, and historical trauma associated with monuments in public spaces, and the various outcomes that have been and will continue to be playing out in Santa Fe and other communities across the country and beyond. Do we want to go to the next slide, Ugo, for the overall agenda?
Yes.
We are hosting the virtual meeting for the public to discuss potential actions to this monument in Santa Fe, New Mexico. After a series of prior episodes, the monument was substantially damaged in August of 2023. And GSA is considering potential options for the monument and site as part of its requirements for fulfilling our obligations under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act and integrated into our agency's National Environmental Policy Act analysis. Section 106 requires GSA to identify alternatives for consideration, to assess effects on historic properties, and to seek and consider the views of the public. This meeting will provide information on options discussed in previous meetings with tribal nations, the New Mexico SHPO, and other consulting parties, and seek input on the identified alternatives that have been identified this far, I should say, and other alternatives that may yet be proposed. GSA personnel will solicit community input and, time allowing, answer questions, and public comments will be accepted through a date that you'll hear more about later. I'd like to now turn the agenda over to our Regional Commissioner, Giancarlo Breezy.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I am Giancarlo Breezy. As mentioned, I also go by GC. I'm the Regional Commissioner for the Greater Southwest region, which covers New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. The General Services Administration, also known as GSA's mission is to deliver value and savings in real estate, acquisition, technology, and other mission support services across the federal government. The Public Building Service, which is what I am part of and a component of the GSA, supports federal civilian agencies with real estate solutions, including the design, construction, operations, and maintenance of owned and leased properties. In my role, I oversee roughly 35 million square feet and almost 1,500 in owned and leased assets. One such asset is the Santiago y Campos U.S. Courthouse in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where the Kit Carson Monument is located. I wanted to, most of all, say thank you for your participation this afternoon, and I look forward to listening to all of you. Thank you. Back to you, Hugo.
Thank you, GC. And good afternoon again, everyone. I failed to introduce myself early on. I apologize. My name is Hugo Gardea, and I serve as the Region 7 Historic Preservation and Fine Arts Officer. So a quick brief statement on who was Kit Carson. He was a known frontiersman, an expedition guide, a U.S. Indian agent, and a U.S. Army officer during the Civil War. He's also remembered as the instrument of the government's policy to suppress and forcibly remove Native American tribes from their homelands in Arizona and New Mexico territory. During his military service, Carson led forces that implemented a scorched earth campaign against several tribes, including the Navajo Nation and the Muscaleto Apache. This campaign and others like it were part of a period in American history during which federal policies and resulting actions towards indigenous communities were fraught with aggression, broken agreements, and the displacement of these peoples from their ancestral lands. Many of you know where the monument is located in Santa Fe, but for those of you that are not familiar with the city, this aerial will provide some context for you as to the monument's location. The Federal Oval, as the area is known locally, is approximately 3 streets north of the City Plaza and at the north end of Lincoln Avenue. And you see Lincoln Avenue leading right up to the monument. So the monument is located in front of the Campos Courthouse, like GC noted. And here in both the aerial plan and the survey are noted with a red circle. So let's discuss the monument timeline. When New Mexico became a territory in 1850, construction was started on a territorial capital in 1855, but it really wasn't completed due to funding challenges, especially those caused by the Civil War. In 1884, the Grand Army of the Republic, which was a fraternal organization dedicated to veterans of the Union Army, decided to erect a monument to Kit Carson. Kit Carson was an officer in the Union Army. There was some real disagreements and infighting between 3 different cities, Taos, Las Vegas, and Santa Fe, for the opportunity to have the monument. And at the end of the day, former U.S. Senator Dorsey, who owned a ranch in northern New Mexico that included a sandstone quarry, donated the monument and obelisk to the Grand Army of the Republic if they could fund the foundation. The GAR received permission from the then Department of Interior to place the monument on the Capitol grounds. And in this photo, you see an early image of the monument, probably when the courthouse was still under construction, or then Capitol was still under construction. The monument was dedicated on Memorial Day in 1885. And then the courthouse, at that point then a courthouse, was completed 4 years later in 1889. In 1954, the GAR ceased to exist, and their assets conveyed to the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. After completing an assessment in 1997, GSA conserved the monument in 2001 due to significant deterioration. Then, during the summer of social protests in 2020, GSA protected the monument due to repeated tagging in conjunction with the protests. And here you see an early photo of the plywood barrier that was put up that summer. It was during that summer of 2020 when GSA researched the history of the monument in the New Mexico archives and discovered that it, in fact, was not owned by the federal government, but instead by the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War. Again, they were the successor organization to the Grand Army of the Republic. The monument was conveyed to GSA in October of 23. But unfortunately, it was in August of 2023 when the top 3 blocks of the obelisk were vandalized and damaged. These are some images of the graffiti and vandalism in the last few years to the monument. And these are photos of the monument shortly after the top 3 blocks were toppled. GSA has previously consulted on the monument with tribal nations and interested consulting parties on several occasions. GSA, in meeting our responsibilities to facilitate government-to-government meetings with tribes, first held listening sessions with tribal nations that have a cultural affiliation in New Mexico to discuss the monument, their thoughts about the monument, and their input on the monument. Subsequently, in May of this year, GSA hosted the initial Section 106 consulting parties meeting. It was during these series of meetings that various thoughts and opinions about the monument surfaced, including potential options, as well as a request for additional site documentation of the federal oval. Victoria is leading that study. Victoria, would you like to provide us a few thoughts about that site documentation study?
Thank you, Hugo. My name is Victoria Clow, and I work in GSA's Historic Preservation and Fine Arts Program, supporting Region 7 and this property. As you may have gathered, GSA owns a number of historic assets, one of them being the Federal Oval. It and downtown Santa Fe have a rich history, beginning with its indigenous heritage, including ancestral Pueblo settlements and Tewa villages. Now, of course, there's also the Spanish and military history of downtown Santa Fe, as well as a number of historical events that took place, including the Tercio Millennial Celebration and the use of the Federal Oval as a racetrack, which gives it its oval shape. These cultural resources are blended with later development, including the federal courthouse, which Hugo mentioned earlier, where the monument is located. as well as a stone wall that encompasses around the actual federal oval, and a Carson monument, and a post office federal building. All these create a tapestry of historic property. And over the years, GSA has undertaken surveys of these cultural resources and nominated individual properties to the National Register. We're currently pulling together different studies, local history, and drawing from tribal knowledge in a more inclusive study of the federal oval. And this is the actual study that we go with referencing. And that document will support our review of this action as well as other federal undertakings so that we can understand the potential impact on historic property. So this document will be shared with consulting parties and the State Historic Preservation Office, AKA the SHPO, and the data gathered will be summarized in an upcoming environmental assessment. It's not specific to the Carson Monument. It's intended to provide, though, a greater understanding of the federal oval. It's a collection of historic resources. And this work is being compiled by a cultural resource management team, which includes the local archaeologists, as well as this team is working with local pueblos to gain additional information to connect it with the indigenous history of the property. Thank you, Ugo.
You're welcome. Thank you, Victoria. So GSA understands the current conditions of the monument are not acceptable. In the previous listening sessions and consultations, GSA noted about 5 general ideas about the monument, some of which contain further expanded ideas. So let's go over some of what has been discussed. So these include, as you see here in the bullets, no action, leaving the monument in its current state, covered and protected, which again, GSA finds as unacceptable. The second is to retain all or portions of the monument on site with some interpretation and removing the barrier and tarp. Third option is to relocate the monument for public display at another outdoor publicly accessible venue or inside a building. The fourth was disassembly and storage of the monument. And the fifth was restoring the monument in place. So now that you've heard about the previous options under consideration, the history of the monument, GSA's responsibilities to consult regarding the monument, and our current efforts to document the history of the site, GSA really is interested in the public's participation and input. So please give us your thoughts about the monument and what, if anything, should happen with the monument. But first, a few rules of engagement. So we have allocated 2 hours for this meeting, and we are approximately 20 minutes into the meeting. So everyone's microphone was muted prior to start of the meeting. You should be able to unmute your microphone to make comments. We do ask you to respect other participants' views and comments, and you are encouraged to type questions or comments in the QA box or the chat box. And we will call on participants in the order that they registered for the meeting. And then based on the number of speakers we may or may not have, we may need to limit the time to about 3 to 5 minutes. So let me go to the list of participants in order of registration. 1 second. Okay, so the first registrant for the meeting was Heather Limeboy with the city of Santa Fe. Heather, are you in the call? Okay, not hearing Heather. We will move to the next registrant, which was Nicole Ramirez Thomas. Nicole, are you in the call? I do not hear Nicole. Victoria, I'm not able to see all of the people on the call, so I don't know if you can see some of them. Let's see, the next person that registered is Martin Yoggers. Martin, I think I did see you on the call. Martin, the floor is yours for comments.
Okay, Ugo, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you for inviting me again. So Martin Jaggers, I'm the president of the board of directors of the Kit Carson House National Historic Landmark in Taos. And I participated on that last call. And I'll just maybe say again that I am on the call to listen, really, and learn. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be advising on how to handle this. We're kind of looking to the town of Santa Fe, to city of Santa Fe, to see how you decide to handle this. I do want to say that I want to compliment you on going through this process and encouraging dialogue with all of the Pueblo tribes, the Navajo Nation, of course, and the public, because certainly I think it would be very inappropriate to take formal action based on just vandals that come through in the night and don't really come face to face and address their concerns in a proper forum. So what I'll just say is, I mentioned this to Ugo on the last call, that if there are questions regarding historical maybe disputes regarding Carson's history, I would like to offer the museum as a resource with people that we have to try to clarify. I think Ugo did a fine job of giving a very quick summary. But I'll say that what we're attempting up here, we're dealing with a structure which is in disrepair, so we need to take some urgent action to stabilize the building for preservation for the long term. And then we're actually engaged in an interpretation process. We've hired someone to study and interact with the many communities affected by the U.S. westward expansion. So I think it's very difficult to understand Carson unless you put it in that perspective. So in the back building, which we plan to turn into a museum, we really want to explore for the visitor the impact of the U.S. westward expansion. And again, I was corrected on that term by a friend, and they preferred the word conquest, but we have a lot to learn about our history. And so I'm excited that I think we have an opportunity to engage the community in looking at it, maybe from a different perspective, whereas the museum in the past has kind of existed as a memorial to Carson. The home will remain the Carson home, but I think opening up and exploring some of these controversial issues are what's required of us in this current cultural climate. So again, I want to see how this progresses, and so I'm available, I guess, if I can help in any way.
Thank you, Martin. I appreciate your comments. The next participant that registered was Dr. Gregorio Gonzalez. Is Dr. Gonzalez on the call? Victoria, I see you nodding your head. Dr. Gonzalez, if you could unmute yourself.
Oh, here we are. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry about that. We've been having some connection issues where I'm at right now.
No worries. The floor is yours.
Oh no, yeah, I appreciate this opportunity to get to just listen and learn and to hear, I think, about the public's perspectives. But while also understanding, that I think in my role as the tribal liaison for the Department of Cultural Affairs, my work is very much geared towards working with tribal governments, and also kind of connecting that with urban indigenous community organizations, as well as with DCA divisions. And so, I think in that role, I think it's important to amplify tribal voices in this space. And so I know there are a diversity of perspectives, and also wanting to be respectful of what those can communicate, but also understanding that I think tribal peoples have a very kind of a notable experience with this individual in particular. And so, I think it offers us an important opportunity here to really, I think, to assess why I think a monument towards this specific individual would resonate, or why it would actually have a lot of dissonance within particular communities who had very different kinds of relationships with this particular individual who's being monumentalized. So, I think just in my role here, again, I'm wanting to listen and wanting to learn, and I think, but while understanding that I think it is absolutely integral that tribal voices be given the opportunity to speak, and that those perspectives be given the weight that they deserve, because I think it's just we're at an important point where we can offer I think a perspective that hasn't really been able to have been articulated in the way that it is today. So again, I appreciate this opportunity to share those thoughts with you, and I'm, like I said, I'm looking forward to listening and learning from others in the community as well. So thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome, Dr. Gonzalez. Thank you for calling in. And as you're aware, your office will be involved as GSA moves forward with whatever undertaking occurs. The next person that registered, also from the Department of Community Affairs, is Cultural Affairs, excuse me, Gretchen. Gretchen, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, Hugo. Thanks so much for having us attend this meeting. I am here representing the New Mexico State Historic Preservation Office, and I'm just here to listen to public comments, and just interested in getting feedback. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you, Gretchen. And as I mentioned, you will also be involved. Okay, the next participant that registered is Aaron McSherry with the City of Santa Fe. Is Aaron on the call?
I am on the call.
Okay,
Good afternoon. I'm mostly here to listen. And actually Heather added, since you initially called her name, I think she was the first on your list. I don't know if she wants to jump in at all, but I mostly had a question so far. When you mentioned the 5 different options you're looking at, one of them was the relocate for public display. Would that be in its current state or in a restored version, or is that another kind of sub option of that option?
that none has been identified, so it could be any of the above.
Mhm. Okay, so those would be 2 different potential versions of a relocation.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
And hi, this is Heather Lamboy. Sorry, I was running behind, but I
No
really
worries.
appreciate the fact that you're holding this public meeting, and I'm just looking forward to listening to the comments. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, the next participant is Manuel Castillo. Is Mr. Castillo on the call? Mr. Castillo, are you muted by chance? Victoria, I can't see. Is there Mr.?
His mic is not able, he's not able to work his mic, so yeah, it's nothing to comment, or his mic is not performing as intended,
Okay.
so, but he has no comments.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Mr. Castillo, for calling in. Our next participant is Pamela. And Pamela, I apologize, Najowski. I apologize for butchering your last name.
Ugo, Pamela is on the call, but we may want to
Yes.
just move forward and maybe we circle back to her.
Okay. Oh, Pamela, I think you just unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I'm doing this on an iPhone, so I just somehow hit something and it said I could unmute. Yes, I am with a chapter of the Santa Fe Trail Association, the end of the trail chapter in Santa Fe, from San Miguel del Vado to Santa Fe. And I had a statement at the first listening meeting. And it really kind of pretty much stands, but I'm pleased to see how the options have been specified, because it was unclear to me if there was a chance that the monument could stay where it is. I like the option that of doing the interpretation, restoring the monument, but having some interpretive material presented there. And I guess at this point, that's my comment.
Thank you, Pamela. Our next speaker is Gary Mokino.
Good afternoon. Along with Heather Lamboyd, I'm here to listen in on the comments. So we're both in the same organization and division. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mokino. So you were just here to listen, or?
Yeah, listen to the public comments of what's going on, and along with Heather Lamboyd, she is my director. So we're sitting and listening.
Okay. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Carla McWilliams with the Department of Cultural Affairs.
Hi, Ugo. Thank you so much. Carla McWilliams. I'm a historian with the State Historic Preservation Office, and like my colleague Gretchen had said, here to listen to public comment and observe. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our next participant is Stephen Mofson, also with the Department of Cultural Affairs.
Yes, thank you. I also work for the New Mexico SHPO office, and I'm just here to listen to public comment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Our next speaker is Hal Espin. I apologize, Mr. Espin, if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Did we lose Mr. Espin? I thought I saw him on the call earlier. Victoria, do you see a Hal Espin?
I thought he was on earlier. I don't see him anymore.
He was, and he has departed.
He has departed. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Let's next move to, let's see, Mr. Paul Duran.
Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Paul Duran. I'm the archaeologist with the City of Santa Fe's Historic Preservation Division. My manager is Gary Mokino and director is Heather Lamboy. And same as my colleagues, I'm here to listen and just observe and see what kind of direction we're moving forward. So I appreciate the time and thank you, Mr. Hugo, for allowing me to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you for jumping on.
Thank you.
Our next participant is Paul Joy.
Hi there, everybody. Paul Joy, the Chief of Police for the Santa Fe Police Department. Also, just here to listen and observe.
And Mr. Joy, you indicated you were with the city as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Mark Mitchell. Is Mr. Mitchell? Yep.
Yeah,
I see.
former Governor Mitchell is on the call.
Mr. Mitchell, I believe you're muted. Oh, there we go. Mr. Mitchell, we cannot hear you if you are speaking. If you would like, we could come back to you. We can certainly wait a few more moments if needed. Okay, let's move to the next speaker and we will give Mr. Mitchell an opportunity to work out his audio. Let's see, the next speaker I have is Ron Siebler.
I think Mr. Siebler is just listening in related to the monument. And it's
okay. Mr. Siebler, you are also muted, but if you're just listening, you're welcome to listen. Okay, and that is the last of our public speakers. Mr. Mitchell, have you been able to get your audio to work? Mr. Mitchell, if you could type a message into the chat box, we will certainly obtain your comments that way, or if you want to type a question into the chat box or into the Q&A box, please certainly do so. Okay, that is the last of our speakers. Let me open the floor again to anyone who has not had an opportunity to comment. The rest of the participants in the call are GSA employees. Certainly, if I missed somebody on the call, please go ahead and unmute yourself and chime in. Anyone that wants to make another comment? Okay, I read your comment, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you. Your comments have been noted. Mr. Mitchell is a former governor of the Pueblo of Tesuque, and we did have an opportunity to meet with him during the listening sessions. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. That is the last of our public speakers. What I would like to do is continue with our brief presentation. So what are the next steps for GSA? I think at this point, it's important to emphasize again, as Beth indicated earlier, that GSA has not made a decision on the future of the monument. GSA will continue our Section 106 consultation and accept additional comments regarding the monument, and updates will be available on the Kit Carson website that is on the GSA website. Due to the complex nature of the monument and who it celebrates, GSA's intentions are to undertake a NEPA analysis. Carla, would you like to add anything for our pending NEPA analysis?
Thank you, Ugo. My name is Carla Carmichael, and I'm the NEPA Environmental NEPA Manager for Region 7, and I'll be conducting the EA on this topic. Basically, what we're going to do is hopefully get comments and suggestions, things from the public. If you can let people know that we have, you are going to post the email address, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
That's next slide.
Okay, great. We have an email address. If you're not comfortable speaking publicly, or you didn't want it recorded, please email a comment, email a suggestion for what to do with it. We do have 5 options that we've thrown out there, but we need more. And we're going to take all of those options and we're going to start to dissect them down and study them in detail. That's part of what the NEPA analysis is. And eventually it will lead us to some kind of a solution on what is going to be best. That's it. So we need your suggestions. We need your comments.
Thank you, Carla. And I see, Victoria, I believe you added the Kit Carson website in the chat box. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So those of you on the call, if you can open your chat box, feel free to click on the link and that will take you to the GSA website for the Kit Carson Monument. That is the website where we will host a variety of documents regarding the monument and regarding the NEPA process as well. As the slide here shows, the deadline for submitting comments is 30 days from today. So August 17th of next month. Please submit your comments. And then I'm going to go to the next slide, but we're not going to adjourn just yet. Beth, GC, are there any, or I suppose I should open the floor to GSA staff that may not have had an opportunity to comment. Are there any GSA staff on the call that would like to add anything? Okay, I can't see if anybody has raised their hand or unmuted, but I will go ahead and proceed. So here on the screen, what you're seeing is the address for the Kit Carson email. So if you do have any comments, we encourage you to use this email address, and I'll leave this up here. Again, it's K7-kitcarson@gsa.gov. Please feel free to add comments to that email address. Alternatively, if you prefer to send written printed comments, you're welcome to do so at the address that you see here on the screen.
The only thing I would add, Ugo, is an additional opportunity here for anyone to ask questions, whether it be a comment or a question about anything that you've heard previously or anything that you've heard in our last hour together here. Please feel free to ask questions.
And I'm happy to go back to any of the particular slides if that's desired by anybody. Happy to go back to the slide with the options if that would help.
This is Erin with the city. I'm curious if there's any specific locations for relocation that you've had suggested or anything like that.
Yes. Beth, would you like me to go over those that have been suggested?
Sure.
So, Erin, I believe it was you that asked that question, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you, Erin, for that question. So let me go back to this slide with the options. So as the third bullet there indicates, it's to relocate the monument for public display at another outdoor publicly accessible venue or inside a building. So the publicly accessible venues that have been mentioned in the 3 meetings that we've held that facilitated, the first venue that was mentioned was to relocate the monument to Bosque Redondo in eastern New Mexico, where the members of the Navajo Nation and the Mescalero Apache were taken as part of the Long Walk. So that was the first suggestion, was to move the monument there with some interpretation. The second location that was mentioned at one of the meetings was to move the monument to Taos, where Kit Carson lived. And of course, there's a couple of areas in Taos that were significant to him, one being the home and museum, and Mr. Joggers is on this call. The other being the cemetery, right around the corner from the house and museum. That's the second location that was suggested at one of our meetings. The third location suggested was the National Cemetery there in Santa Fe. Because Kit Carson is a veteran, served in the U.S. Army, it was suggested to relocate the monument to the National Cemetery. And of course, the other suggestion was to move it inside a building. We don't know which building. It was suggested to move it inside the courthouse that you see here in the background. However, there really isn't room for it there in the courthouse. The lobby has very limited space, and the monument is 20 feet tall. Although now it's currently about 15 feet tall, maybe not even that tall.
Ugo, Martin Jaggers, may I make a comment?
Yes, of course.
I just wanted to share, part of I know everyone is listening, and really it's to understand the process that you're taking to try to solve this, very challenging issue. And I just wanted to share that about, I'm thinking that maybe it's 10 years ago, Taos was going through this process of, there was a movement to change the name of Kit Carson Park. And it gathered, a fair amount of momentum and made it to the town council meetings and such. And the idea was, because of this controversial history, to change the name of the park to Red Willow Park to honor Taos Pueblo. And it got to a certain point when the town council invited the Pueblo, and the Pueblo had never been asked about the renaming and consider that Red Willow term sacred, and were offended that we would consider, the town was going to consider doing that. So I guess, lesson is to really not try to decide for other people unless you're able to actually get a real direct statement. And I know on this last call, there were a number of different Pueblos that stated they were going to go back to their tribal governments and come back with a statement. But just a word of caution that it's nice to get a direct response from whoever is representing these different groups rather than just deciding for others. And that was a hard lesson learned, and it was really remarkable that in this day and age it proceeded as far as it did without actually asking the party that was going to be affected the most. One other last thought, and that is, I don't know if this monument needs to stay within the state of New Mexico or not. There is the site in Boggsville where Carson and Josefa passed away, and the home, their home where they were living, is destroyed, and it's just a vacant patch of land out there. And so that's a thought of another place that might might readily accept the monument.
Can you say that name again, Mr. Joggers?
The name of the place?
Correct.
It's called Boggsville, Boggsville. It's up by La Junta, Colorado, okay. But Boggsville is the actual historic site. Yeah.
And you indicated that's where they passed away.
It is, and there's Boggs, Thomas Boggs was actually the owner of the property. He's the one who handled Kit Carson's will and his estate, and they actually ended up raising the children in that area on that property. And so yeah, that's a potential site to consider.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. That
okay, this is Pam Majowski. Okay, actually, Martin, I was curious at that point when they realized that the renaming the park Red Willow was not what the Taos Pueblo folks wanted to happen. How did they feel about? Did they have any comments about retaining the name Kit Carson Park?
They didn't. Yeah, interesting, Pam. They had no opinion on it. And actually, it's it's interesting. Sometimes we think everyone's walking around with harboring a lot of ill will or whatever, but there was no problem leaving it the way it was. Yeah. They were just offended that people were making this decision without asking.
Right.
That's what
Right.
really set
Yes.
things off, and it shut things down also right away. So
Wow. Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Beth, would you like to make any comments on?
Well, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Jaggers that I really appreciated his comments. And that is precisely why the federal government is under the obligation to do nation-to-nation consultation. And that is why this whole discussion began with that. We have to respect the trust responsibilities that the federal government has to tribal nations. And that is why this type of consultation always includes that as a first step. And we will be, that doesn't mean that that's over either. Out of those conversations is what is where the suggestion for having a fuller interpretation of the layers of the history that Victoria was describing came from. And so once we have that, everyone will be given the opportunity to comment on that document as well. And we hope that that will also prompt more discussion about answering some of the specific questions that might be out there that we've heard a few of this evening, because we haven't gotten down to contemplating the level of detail as we formulate and analyze the options, but we will have to. We just had a question in the chat that some of you may have seen about if it is to be relocated, how would that be accomplished, as a loan or as a deaccessioning? And we haven't gotten to that level yet, but I appreciate that question. And I very much appreciate your tale of caution. And so I just wanted to reassure everyone that that's why we began with having the nation-to-nation consultation, which will continue.
Hugo, Carla has her hand up.
Yes, Carla.
I'm sorry, I just want to know if they kept it named Kit Carson Park.
yes, it is. It continues as Kit Carson Park.
And I also think that that story, that tale, and that one happened some time ago. But as we're seeing these types of discussions happening across the United States as well as internationally, it's not a one size fits all. What the resolution is that a community feels is the appropriate one. And so that's why we really do want to hear from as many voices as possible as we're contemplating this, and being very transparent about what we consider and why. So there will be much more to come, and really appreciate everyone being here this evening.
Beth, we're at the top of the hour. Any last minute thoughts from anybody on the call? I don't want to adjourn the meeting if there are still questions that anybody on the call would like to ask GSA or provide comments about the monument. Okay, hearing none. Beth, I
Wait,
think.
Pamela is signing. I don't know if she wanted to make a comment. No, she doesn't.
Okay.
I did want to make a comment that GSA, our program, has been looking at what different monuments, how other communities across the country have dealt with similar situations, so that we can understand how they address them and to take advantage of any lessons learned.
Okay, well, Beth, I think we are good to adjourn. I will probably still stay on the call in case we get anybody that comes in late, or are we okay to adjourn?
I would say that if someone hasn't been able to join for the first hour of a 2-hour meeting, that we have done our due diligence in keeping things open, and that we're going to, I think we will also, part of that due diligence you've already mentioned, that we're going to have this meeting recording on the website, and the website is out there, and it can be shared very broadly and widely with anyone who's interested, and that we will take comments from any party through the website and the email address. So
Correct.
I think we are good for this evening, unless someone has had a last minute thought. Please speak up. Giancarlo has his hand up, and so we need to have him potentially have the last word this evening.
No need to have the last word, but I would agree that I think we've given everybody an opportunity. I'm glad that we did. But I did want to just take a moment quickly to thank the GSA team who made this possible and has been very thoughtful in shepherding this entire process. A big thanks to you all. But more importantly, just thanks to everyone this evening who provided their input, their comments. They were very much insightful. I did learn quite a bit and appreciated that. So thank you all. It's really important and critical that we get everyone's input as we go through this process. So thank you.
Thank you, GC. With that, I will end the meeting, adjourn and end the meeting. Again, reminder, please submit your comments to GSA by August 17th of 2024. Thank you very much. Everyone have a pleasant evening, and we will be in touch.